Time now for our weekly Friday discussion of some of the week's top stories. After new tensions between Jewish settlers and Palestinians on the West Bank, we're going to look at the challenges facing President-elect Obama in the Middle East. We'll also look at the economy with an auto industry bailout being discussed. Can the U.S. remain competitive in this business and others? And after the Mumbai terror attacks, we'll talk about the India-Pakistan relationship and the terrorist connections. We're joined once again by Richard Haass, President of the Council on Foreign Relations. Carla Robbins of the New York Times, who normally joins us, was unavailable today. So, Richard, you will be doing double duty. First of all, on a personal note, you were in Mumbai just before the terrorist attacks.
Right, and timing is a lot in life, and I was lucky. I was at the Taj Palace Hotel for a set of meetings. I checked out the night before, and literally when I landed here is when I heard the news. Remarkable.
Well, in light of what has happened this week, we had a two-pronged approach on the part of the United States trying to ask for cooler heads in the region. You had Condi Rice that went, and on top of that, you had Admiral Mike Mullen from the Joint Chiefs. What influence does the United States have over India and Pakistan to try to say, hey, can we back off some?
The short answer is not a whole lot. These are two powerful countries, both nuclear armed, with a long history of animosity, indeed, from the time of their birth. In the case of Pakistan, the United States is their major provider of economic and military aid. But in a funny sort of way, it doesn't give us as much influence as you'd think, because the United States is in many ways dependent on Pakistan. We don't want to threaten to cut off the aid, because as bad as the situation is there now, one could imagine it being worse. So Pakistan's very weakness and dysfunctionality in some ways gives it an ability to resist American pressures.
There's tremendous pressure in India, though, to do something, to respond, to be tough. What should India do?
That's exactly right. What it needs to do is resist striking at Pakistan. It may have the legal right to do it, but I'm not sure it's smart. It would probably make a bad situation worse. I think the Indians, first of all, need to improve their own intelligence capabilities, their homeland security. What happened never should have happened, clearly. The response was really quite poor. Secondly, India has as many Muslims as Pakistan has. We're probably talking 160, 170 million Muslims. India does not want to see intercommunal riots. It doesn't want to see the social fabric of its society break down. So the Indian government has to take steps to make sure that things don't get out of hand, which they very well could inside India. I think also the United States can maybe help trying to engineer some sort of joint Indian-Pakistani project, perhaps to deal with something like terrorism, even if it's only symbolic. But the real thing will be whether the U.S. can get the Pakistanis to crack down a little bit on these groups.
Well, and this is what it seems to show, as if we needed more evidence. What a difficult situation Pakistan is for the United States and for much of the world.
You're exactly right. The only thing harder than dealing with your enemies is dealing with your friends. Getting the Pakistanis to crack down on these groups that are operating really brazenly out of cities like Karachi and Lahore is tough. But the Pakistani government is weak. It's unable or unwilling to do the things. But what we've got to try to do is persuade them that their own existence is at stake. Pakistan is getting Talibanized. It's getting radicalized. And unless they take some steps against these radicals, one day it's going to be the Pakistani government that's going to be there in the crosshairs.
Well, let's try to move from South Asia to the Middle East now. And on the subject of advice to a new administration, you have an article that is out, a report, talking about a new approach, perhaps, when dealing with the Arab-Israeli conflict.
Yeah, what we're talking about is something that the Council on Foreign Relations, our scholars, did with the Brookings Institution scholars. And what we did was we looked at the entire Middle East and argued that the United States needs to use our title, restore the balance in its policy. And what we've done is say we need a new diplomatic negotiating approach with Iran to deal not simply with its nuclear program, but with all aspects of Iranian foreign policy. Plus, the United States really needs to do a lot more to promote peace between Israel and Syria, which is something that the United States has not been involved with at all over the last few years. We've let the Turks do it. And possibly also to promote progress between Israelis and Palestinians, as difficult as that is, but as important as that is.
As important as it is, let's talk about that. If there were a way that the United States could bring about a solution for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, would that knock the legs out from under a lot of these terrorist organizations that use that as a cause?
Alas, not. Which is not to say there aren't important reasons to do something between Israel and Palestine. There are. It would be great for Israel. We want Israel to be a secure, Jewish, prosperous, democratic state. It needs peace in order to do this. We want the Palestinians, for human and political reasons, to be satisfied. It would be a tremendous help for stability in the Arab world. But when you look at groups like Al-Qaeda, they have agendas which are so fundamental or so radical that the idea of compromising with Israel is not what they want to see. They don't want to see a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution. And by the way, that one state is not Israel. They want only a Muslim state there. So we shouldn't kid ourselves. As valuable as it would be to get a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, it's not going to satisfy the agendas of radicals who, quite honestly, totally reject the idea of a Zionist Jewish entity.
All right. And from one crisis to this one, the financial crisis, the global one, terrible report on unemployment in the United States, unemployment growing around the world. Then you have the auto industries, the pillar of American industries, going begging for money now. The days of America being able to compete globally, have they gone?
No, but we can't compete on terms that we have historically. We're part of a global world. Money moves around, people move around, technology moves around. If the American automobile industry is going to be competitive, in a funny sort of way, we're going to have to somewhat destroy it in order to save it. Probably either highly conditional help or some sort of managed bankruptcy where we basically prearrange the terms of resetting pension plans, healthcare plans, technology and quality standards. We have to compete with the best from Japan, the best from Korea, and unless we radically change the way we're doing business in a global world, the United States won't be competitive. The good news is we've got the human talent, we've got the technology, we can be there if our politics will allow us to do it.
And we've got to leave it there all by yourself, Richard. You filled up all of this. Thank you so much, Richard Haass from the Council on Foreign Relations.